Hello, welcome. In this video, I'm just going to talk about a theory which I guess probably best called like the brain theory of reality or something like that. Um, so the logic is fairly simple in a way. I mean, like um, if you look at any kind of intelligent organism like human beings or the animals or whatever, they're interacting with their environment, so they have this feedback loop. So they have their set of inputs from the environment through their sensory modalities. There's some sort of processing goes on, and then they react. Um, they output. Um, so they output electrical signals and they input electrical signals. So the outputs go to their motor cortex or their auditory or whatever it is, but it's initially electrical signals. So you've got this set of electrical signals coming in as input, and you've got this set of electrical signals going out as output. And in between, you have some sort of processing. And the idea is that presumably, if there's any kind of causality or reality to what we perceive, our brains are actually learning about some kind of external and doing so well enough to pick out kind of patterns. And this is sort of what we would loosely call kind of intelligence. So there's this sort of four elements. You've got the inputs, you've got the outputs, and you've got this processing in between. And you've got this idea that there's some sort of intelligence that is kind of optimizing towards something. Now, this whole argument can apply to the brain as a whole, but then there's another step. So there's this feedback loop, and out of this feedback loop, there are the things in the environment which remain always there, fixed, or which are within the locus of control. And there are those things which change and are outside of the locus of control. And one of the key things within the kind of the locus of control is the body itself. So the brain, you could imagine that it's an intelligent machine that initially just starts with some data coming in. It's learning in this feedback loop, and it through that it develops a concept. So concept would be intelligent pattern behavior. And it develops a concept of a physical body. So its model of the world starts to incorporate a physical body. But in the abstract, as long as the inputs, processing, and the outputs occur in a way whereby the processing is intelligent, for this is very abstract concept. Okay, it applies to the human being with a brain. It learns about its body. It would apply to any other animal with a brain, intelligent control system. And then we can see, okay, it learns about its body. But then you ask the question, okay, why can't we apply this same argument to a subset of the brain? So what about a particular region of the brain? Because if that region is large enough and complex enough to have an intelligence of its own, then it too has a set of inputs, it has a set of outputs, and there's a feedback loop. So its reactions will ultimately affect the external environment, because they'll affect the rest of the brain, and then they'll cause behavior, blah blah blah. So there's an environment in which that subset of the brain exists, and in that environment, there's the same feedback loop. So the abstracts of the feedback loop process, whereby the understanding of a body is learnt via the locus of control, equally applies. So long as this brain area is intelligent enough to be able to learn its environment in that sense, it will have some conception of that which is within its locus of control and that which is always there. And that is from the perspective of the learner within the feedback loop, that is the definition of a body. So what that means is that perhaps different subsets of the brain perceive a body, but that body may not look anything like our body as we perceive it. And now just this one final thought I'll put on top of that. If the argument applies to the whole brain and to subsets of the brain, how can we know if we are a subset, what we're perceiving, because we're perceiving this feedback loop, this environment, etc. How can we know that we're the whole brain or a subset of it? Statistically, it's more likely that we're a subset of it. And therefore, the conclusion from that, turning it around, will be that there's a kind of a greater brain. So that's why I call it the brain theory of reality.